you lovely computer people out there, and welcome back to another episode of Lost in the Farmer's Market, 2025 edition, Season 6, if you can imagine that. I'm not sure how we got here, but I'm glad to be here and glad to talk to you folks. Now, today's specimen is an interesting houseplant. And I know houseplants, but it is the winter, and nothing's really growing outdoors except for the winter harvest weeds, and you know what? When you have a moment, put in the comments if you'd like to hear about winter harvest weeds. Things that you can eat out in the fields, and I will look into doing a video about it if enough of you guys say something. But today's plant in this lovely hurricane lamp terrarium, I guess that counts technically. We're creating an artificial terrain. It's um this lovely plant is a frosty fern Selaginella. Selaginella. It's more commonly called Krauss's club moss. Its scientific name is Selaginella kraussiana, which these fern-like plants are actually native to Africa. They are commonly called spike mosses, though they're not actually related to ferns. They're classified as a fern ally in some publications. I don't know how that works. Maybe they're just like really supportive. I don't understand that. But anyway, they're not mosses either. They're a vascular plant that evolved something to the tune of about 300 million years ago. They're a primitive early plant species that has kept kicking around saying, I'm not dead yet. And I mean, I'm all for that. I'm all for survivors. All the time. Especially in the garden. No, so, as I said, they are commonly called spike mosses. I think that has to do with the leaf structure. The leaves are actually not leaves, technically. They're called microphylls, and they're pre-leaves, for lack of a better way to describe it. Now, that term sounds weird, and it sounds like something you'd say in the middle of a Yo Mama joke, but no. We've talked about prehistoric leaves before. In last season, or the season before, I believe it is, I covered a plant called butcher's broom, Ruscus aculeatus, which has cladophylls, which are a specific type of prehistoric leaf that is also part stem, because it took a long time for plants to figure that crap out. And you thought going through puberty was hard and figuring yourself out in early adulthood was hard. Plants had millions of years to sort this crap out. And some of them still haven't. You can't see it, but I'm looking off screen at the grow kit in the kitchen. Anyway. Disappointments! Anyway, moving along from that awkwardness, these fern-like plants, as I said, are native to Africa. So, of course, they can't necessarily handle a lot of our climate here. You can't really put this plant out, except in the much warmer zones. They're only hardy in 11A to 12B, so nowhere in Cadillac. However, Florida maybe, but that's where Florida mans is. Who wants to go to a place with Florida man? So, the most well-known member of this family is actually really weird, and I have to bring it up even though it's taking me off topic. The most well-known member of this family is Selaginella lepidophylla, which means nothing to you probably. However, you might recognize it by its most common name, resurrection plant. Now, yes, there are a number of plants that quote-unquote have the word resurrection in it because they come back from the dead, but this is the one that you as a kid would get at like the science museum, and it came in the bag, and you put it in a bowl of water and it greens right up and it expands outward and then it dies again and like it looks like a dead spider with too many legs. Yeah, that thing. That's its famous carny sideshow cousin. There's no other way to describe it because, I mean, I would see that sold at places like the Liberty Science Center in New Jersey and at fairs and stuff. It would always be a weird item that would be sold. And these plants, that tells you the range of motion in the family. In Selaginellas, there are different colors, different shapes, different levels of fluffiness. But the foliage always looks like a fern, so people at a glance think it is one. But, I mean, there's a Selaginella for your fancy, no matter what you do. That's the point, really. Now, the best part is this particular Selaginella, and probably others, are propagated mainly by cuttings. and it readily makes those. Now, I'm going to zoom in for a moment for you. We're going to zoom in, do a little zoom zoom. See those white things coming out of it? Those are roots. And this particular type of Selaginella and others will willingly produce roots at random points on their stems, usually junctures where there's branching, and those roots will make their way all the way down to the soil. And if that part is broken off, it forms an entirely new plant. In fact, cuttings broken off without the roots have a pretty good chance of starting entirely new plants, which means this plant auto propagates itself willingly. I mean, that's a great thing if you want to sell Selaginellas, but if this thing were able to survive the winter, we'd be in some trouble out here in Cackalack. I'm just saying. Just saying. Putting it out there on the street to get hit by a garbage truck. Um, that's exactly what would happen. Now, this is also a bonus because, again, if something should happen to your plant, if you can get a big enough healthy cutting, you can just clone the whole thing and it's genetically identical, which is also the downside because if it's a disease and it's specific, it'll just, let's just say it'll ruin all of your plant's constitution. So you got to be careful of that too. Now, soil and care. This plant prefers deep shade to partial shade. Now, deep shade is 2 hours of sunlight with no direct light, generally speaking. And partial is generally 2 to 6 hours of sunlight. But and the way I'm growing it, and it's grown quite a bit since I've gotten it last year, about 6 months ago. I have it in bright indirect in its hurricane lamp, so it gets humidity, and it's tripled in size. I've given it a little bit of fertilizer, but not a tremendous amount, and it's been very healthy. Now, most of these specimens of this particular type tend to get about 2 to 4 inches tall and up to 1.5 feet wide. So that's 1 foot 6 inches, just so you know. And it is hardy, as I mentioned, in zones 11A to 12B, which is basically Florida and parts of Texas, and basically more into the subtropical zone than we are. The soil is just basic pro-mix potting mix, nothing fancy. And the fertilizer, since this is not an edible plant, I'm just using basic. I know people are going to go, oh my God, he's using that. Miracle Grow, I use that for the houseplants that are inedible. Because at that point, it doesn't matter if they're organic or not. It's irrelevant. Yes, Miracle Grow is not organic, even though it's mineral salts. I got to feed them something, and I can't use organic fertilizers because most of them have aromas. I think y'all out in the garden know exactly what I'm talking about. So it's really easy. It makes a great gift if you want to give something weird and unusual to someone for like a birthday or a celebration of some sort. And it doesn't take much to grow. And in fact, it's probably one of the easiest terrarium plants you could possibly ever buy. So that is Selaginella, Frosty Fern, Selaginella kraussiana in a nutshell. The blog is still running. It's been running. Actually, I've been doing republishing old and updating old forage food episodes. So check it out and see what kind of weeds you can find in the landscape and eat for this time of the year. We're on Blue Sky with a shorthand version of that. I'm working on getting content up before I link it. So stay tuned. And as always, folks, keep them growing. Thanks for watching. More stuff coming. And boy, 2025 is going to be some serious stuff.